Welcome to the adventures of the monad. For the sake of completeness, we now come to the last topic I wish to discuss about the functioning of the etheric envelope. That topic is about ectoplasm, which comes from the Greek ektos, meaning outside, and plasma, meaning mold, i.e. that which is molded outside the human body. This is the name given to the matter mainly, if not wholly etheric, which exudes from a medium and is employed for seance room phenomena. The fascination of the spiritualist movement for the seance, with the central role played by the medium, is no longer in vogue. It played a major role in bringing to people's attention that there were paranormal phenomena that could be viewed and documented. While this may not have spread to the masses, and a good thing too, it did influence intellectuals who went on to communicate a more favorable view of other esoteric ideas that had their origins in India and were initially popularized by the Theosophical Society. W.J. Crawford, in his book The Reality of Psychic Phenomena, 1916, Experiments in Psychical Science, 1918, and Psychic Structures, 1921, describe the research he undertook into such phenomena as table lifting or levitation and rapping. These were phenomena that were witnessed when a medium, who was fully conscious, was able to liberate ectoplasm from their etheric envelopes, supported to a lesser degree by other participants in the seance. Crawford approached the problem of table lifting, etc., purely as problems of mechanics and employing equipment which could measure force, both mechanical and electrical. He succeeded in discovering by deduction from his observations the modus operandi of the psychic structures employed by the medium. These structures are the ejection of ectoplasm and their attachment to an object. At a much later stage, he was able to verify his deductions by direct etheric vision and by photography. It was found that the ectoplasm exuding from the medium was prepared and shaped by the operators who controlled the production of the phenomena into what he termed rods. These rods or bars were attached at one end to the medium and at the other end by suction to the table legs or other objects. At this stage, psychic force was applied through the rods to objects such as tables, moving them in various ways without any physical contact with any person present. Rapping sounds were also produced when these rods struck the floor or hit an object like a bell. The greatest portion of the ectoplasm materialized in the seance was usually obtained from the medium, though this was supplemented by other sitters present. The ectoplasm was sometimes felt. This was despite the fact that it was invisible. It was described as being clammy, cold, reptilian, almost oily, as though the air were mixed with particles of dead and creepy matter. The etheric rods issuing from the medium varied in diameter at their extremities from 1/2 inch to 8 inches, and the free end of each rod seemed to be able to assume various shapes and degrees of hardness. The end could be flat, convex, circular, or oval. It was sometimes soft as the flesh of a baby, or as hard as iron. The body of the rod felt solid, a few inches from the free end, but then became intangible, though it resisted when it was pulled or pushed. It could be sheared and exhibited torque. In the intangible portion between the medium and the tip, a flow of cold spore-like particles could be felt, the flow coming from the medium. There appeared to be a complete circulation of etheric matter, out from the medium and back to her again at a different part of the body. This was not the case in a complete levitation of an object. Crawford considered it probable that the rods consisted of a bundle of fine threads intimately connected and adhering to one another. The psychic force, as it was termed, passed along the threads, stiffening the whole structure into a rigid girder, which was then moved as desired by forces applied within the body of the medium. Experiments seem to indicate that the end of the rod consisted of a thick and more or less elastic film or skin stretched over a thin, somewhat serrated, elastic frame. The elasticity of the film was limited, and if too highly stressed, the film ruptured, leaving the serrated frame exposed. This must have been spooky, yet fascinating to observe. These were all parlor tricks. I wonder what the investigators at the time thought the value was for the medium to have such abilities. The fact that an electroscope, which was a machine for measuring electricity, could be discharged by being touched by a rod indicated that the rod acted as a conductor of high voltage electricity, discharging to the earth through the medium's body, to which it was attached. On the other hand, a rod placed across the terminals of a bell circuit did not cause the bell to ring, thus showing that it offered high resistance to low voltage currents. One thing that was noted was that white light usually destroyed the rod formations, including reflections of light. Red light, however, if not too strong, did not appear to injure the etheric structure, and neither did light emitted from luminous paint. In the case of the movement of objects, two principal methods were employed. In the first, one or more rods were projected from the medium, very frequently from the feet or ankles, sometimes from the lower part of the trunk, and were attached directly to the object to be moved, thus forming a cantilever, i.e., it was only attached at one end. When tables are moved horizontally, the rods are usually attached to the table legs. Where they are lifted into the air, the rod or rods are often spread out like a mushroom at the ends and attached to the undersurface of the table. It is almost like having an extended robot arm. In the second method, the rod or rods projecting from the medium were attached to the floor, and from the point of attachment they continued to the object to be moved, thus no longer forming a cantilever but a fulcrum, between the weight to be lifted and the power source, the medium. If a medium used the cantilever method to raise a table, it was noted that the weight of the medium increased by 95% of the weight of the table. When, on the other hand, the rods were attached to the floor using the fulcrum method, the weight of a levitated table was transmitted directly to the floor, and the medium's weight, instead of being increased, was decreased, the decrease being due to the weight of the excreted ectoplasm forming the rod, one end of which rested on the floor. The method to be employed when lifting an object, cantilever or fulcrum, would be determined by the weight of the object. During the levitation of objects, the stress on the medium was often apparent in the stiffness and even iron-like rigidity of the muscles, principally of the arms, but sometimes all the muscles of the body. Later, this was not observed. Why? We can only guess. The production of these phenomena appear to result in a permanent loss of weight, both of mediums and sitters, but only by a few ounces. I suspect this could have just been attributed to sweating. Inserting an object between the medium and the object being moved caused the rod to fail. If the rod was partially pierced by a pencil, then it remained intact. Breaking such connections between the medium and an object could be injurious to them. In general, the production of these etheric phenomena throws stress on all the sitters at the seance. They experience spasmodic jerks, sometimes quite severe, which went around the whole circle just before the levitation of an object. It would appear that the process of loosening and removing etheric matter from the bodies of the sitters occurred spasmodically and affected them all at once. Crawford was convinced that in the production of seance room phenomena, there are at least two substances employed. One, a component forming the basic part of the psychic structure, which is invisible, impalpable, and generally outside the range of physical things altogether. And two, a whitish, transparent, nebulous substance, which allowed the ectoplasm to connect to physical objects. The substance emanated from the whole body of the medium, but especially from the natural orifices and extremities, from the top of the head, the breasts, and the fingertips. The most usual origin and most easily observed is the mouth, the inner surface of the cheeks, the gums, and the roof of the mouth. The material forms have a certain independence, a hand, for example, being able to move its fingers and grasp the hand of the observer, though sometimes the human skin seems to repel the phantom. The structures, such as fingers, are sometimes smaller than in nature. The back of the materializations has been observed to be without organic form, being merely a mass of amorphous substance. The forms containing a medium of substance necessary to make them appear real. The forms may disappear very gradually, fading away, or almost instantaneously. During the whole time, it is clear that the forms are in physiological and etheric connection with the medium, the sensation reflex of the structures coalescing with that of the medium. Thus, a pin inserted into the substance would cause pain in the medium. On that gory note, let's forget about ectoplasm and go on to conclude our look at the etheric envelope in the next presentation. Thank you.